This is the 10th episode of Positionality Podcast. You can catch us on 99.3 every Saturday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Today's topic is food in the Tibetan community, but I'm sure a lot of the POC immigrant community can relate to this topic. Food is something we need every day, but it can also be such a powerful tool of representation and expression of who we are as a person and what lives we have lived. I have a very special guest today, and her name is Kyikyi. She lives in Oregon and is a prominent Tibetan American food blogger in the Himalayan diaspora. Like many Tibetan refugees, she grew up in India and Nepal. She is a business development manager by day and a mother of two. Her passion is to raise awareness of her address Tibetan culture and heritage through the lens of food by sharing her recipes, culinary stories, and food history. Recently, Kyikyi launched the first of its kind artisanal Tibetan food brand in the US, specializing in ready-to-cook frozen momo and Tibetan hen pies, making her the first woman-owned Tibetan food brand of its kind in the US. Kyikyi, thank you for being on the show, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Tashdalerinsla. Thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to have this discussion around our culinary heritage.
I'm so excited to have you here, and huge congratulations, by the way, to launch your own brand.
I know I have to pinch myself. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So why is I know why it's a big deal, but for our viewers here, why is launching of your frozen momo and hen pies so special and so different, even though there are tons of frozen momo on the market? And maybe explain what momo is first for people that don't
Yeah,
know.
sure. So first, let me explain what a momo is. A momo is a Tibetan word for a dumpling. It's a dumpling of Tibetan origin that has become widely popular and has been adopted in the Himalayan countries of Bhutan, India, and Nepal, countries where you find the predominant population of Tibetan refugees that have settled over the past 70 years. And so in recent years, momo has also been referred to as Himalayan dumplings, reflecting the popularity and adoption of the dumpling in that region.
Okay.
Yeah. And as far as how it's different, because there are already several options. So, yeah, there are many local frozen momo makers and also many home-based businesses, especially in certain areas where there are larger Tibetan communities. Um, my brand or my brand will be the first of its kind to actually offer these food products, these quintessentially Tibetan, food products as a CPG food product, meaning as a consumer packaged good. So right now, the areas in the US where you find momo available in ready-to-cook frozen form, it's normally limited to a certain geographic area, to the local neighborhood. What I'm aspiring to do is make it a national brand and offer it following the, federal rules and regulations with the nutritional packages and all of that, and offer it as a national brand.
So you
Yeah.
want it in a kind of a mainstream market.
Exactly. I that's what I aspire to do, is have maximum reach, because for me, ultimately, it's my medium, it's my love language of introducing people to our Tibetan culture and heritage, which was the reason why I didn't go the restaurant route. Because a lot of people always ask me when I do my pop-ups, where is your restaurant? How come you don't start a restaurant? And so on and so forth. Because in my mind, I wanted maximum representation in the way I knew how. And for me, that was through offering it as a CPG food product, hopefully sitting in grocery aisles one day where anybody will be able to pick up a Tibetan food product off the aisles.
I would love that, Kikila. So, how is the Momo line that you've started raise awareness for the Tibetan culture and heritage? And do you see food as a kind of a pathway to education?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe reflecting on the word activism, activism comes in so many shapes and forms. Most of us, when we think activism, we think rally, we think politics. But I believe that activism can show up in a lot more different forms, whether it's through music, through art. And for me, as I said previously, my form of activism is through my love language of food because I see it as such a beautiful gateway, a very non threatening, a very universally appealing gateway to
Mm-hmm.
introduce our culture, and that is through food. That's why when I talk about food, whether it's at my local pop ups or on social media, I always try to weave storytelling into it. So it's not just about this is a plate of momo, this is a
Mm-hmm.
beef momo.
Yeah.
There is so much more than meets the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And storytelling is such a great way to inform people about one's culture, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I best know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. And storytelling is such a powerful tool. Um,
Right.
mhm. So kind of going away from the food brand, what are your hobbies, Gigila? What do you like to do when you're home and not working?
Um, I watch a lot of horror movies with
Oh,
my younger daughter
uh-huh.
because she's quite obsessed with horror movies. So that's our way of
Uh-huh.
bonding.
Uh-huh.
Because she loves watching horror movies and ASMR. I never knew a world of ASMR even existed until she's like, "Mommy, you've got to watch this." And I'm like, "What am I watching?" She's like, "No, listen. You gotta listen to the sounds of people eating." I'm like, "Really?"
That is so
uh,
funny.
yeah, but other than that, I
Uh-huh.
love to read and I love to write. So I
Mm.
do a lot of that. Writing is my form of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I do
Yeah.
a lot of that too.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. And also, I kind of introduced you a little bit. W- can you maybe, yeah, can you maybe say a little bit about yourself so I can go into some of the other questions?
Sure. Let's see. So my name is Kiki. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually a Tibetan word. It means
Kiki.
happiness, which yeah, a lot of Tibetans don't know. So
Oh,
it's not a made up word. Yeah.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
either. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, Kiki.
Yeah, like
Uh-huh.
kipu,
Oh, okay, Kipo.
yeah,
Yeah,
like that.
means
Yeah, yeah.
happiness in Tibetan.
Yeah,
Word.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So my dad named me Kiki when I
Uh-huh.
was born. So that's
Oh.
while I go by a different name on paper
Uh-huh.
officially, Kiki is what I go by, what all family, friends,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, pretty much everybody knows me by Kiki now.
Right.
But yeah, I grew up in India and Nepal, and
Uh-huh.
then I immigrated to the US.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, once I became a mother, I'm a mother of two girls. They're half Cambodian and half Tibetan.
Mm-hmm.
So it was upon motherhood, actually, that my interest in food started. And when I say my interest in food's always been there. I've always been a foodie. I've
Uh-huh.
always enjoyed eating. But my relationship with food sort of changed because when I became a mother and raising two girls that are half Tibetans in the US, so far away from what I know as home, even though that wasn't in Tibet, it was still in the predominantly Tibetan community in India and Nepal. I felt this immense desire to really reconnect with my heritage, with my Tibetan heritage, and so I found myself doing that through food, introducing them and talking to them about our heritage
Mm-hmm.
by preparing Tibetan foods. And that's how it started, is at a very, very micro level. And that grew as I kind of iterated and evolved to start doing pop-ups at local events.
Mm-hmm.
So my desire to introduce people to our culture and our heritage, it went from my daughters. It grew in scope to introducing at local pop-ups. Then it went to YouTube, where I was trying to reach even more people by showing them how to cook Tibetan food and also giving them a historical and cultural context to the foods I
Mm-hmm.
was showing how to prepare. And then in recent months, I launched the first women-owned Tibetan frozen food brand in the
Mm-hmm.
US. So that's kind of been my
Mm.
journey through the lens
Mm-hmm.
of food, that is.
Yeah. I think it's so special that you kind of started this food brand through kind of your family and the people that you love and kind of
Uh-huh.
wanting them to feel good, and it just kind of translated to other things. And it's so
Yeah.
powerful to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was such a natural progression. It wasn't like, I had this strategy or the vision from day
Mm-hmm.
one. It was a very organic evolution and discovery even of myself in the
Of
process.
course.
While I was trying to teach my girls, I was
Mm-hmm.
also learning and discovering and reconnecting
Mm-hmm.
with my roots because when I came to the US as an immigrant, I went through a phase where I was trying very hard to fit in,
Mm-hmm.
assimilate. And in the process, not consciously, but unconsciously, I was distancing myself from all things Tibetan.
Of course,
And
yeah.
so it was kind of a phase of reckoning for me when I became
Mm-hmm.
a mother. And so that journey has grown, and yeah, here we are.
You know, Gigila, I feel like one of that journey that you've been through, kind of immigrating to the US and then kind of wanting to fit in and distancing yourself from the Tibetan culture
Mhm,
and language, I think it's one that a lot of immigrant can relate because there's such
mhm,
a pressure to fit in, and
mhm,
the idea of perfect citizen is, you know, being able to speak
mhm.
English well, being able to talk the way others talk. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I relate to you heavy on that. I heard, so you say you started the YouTube channel and kind of starting that as like a way to kind of get your word out there. Um, what was that process like? I feel like that can be really scary to put yourself out there, especially in the Tibetan community that is so tight and niche, and everyone kind of
Mhm.
knows each other. And
Yeah,
yeah, I kind of want to hear your thoughts behind that.
yeah. The YouTube phase of my journey was very interesting from a self-development standpoint. I
Mm-hmm.
am an introvert by nature.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like being in front of the camera. And so it felt, at least in the early days, a perpetual state of discomfort
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because I put myself in front of the camera, talking to people and, explaining the food and the context, cultural context behind it and everything. So it was a lot of unlearning and
Mm-hmm.
then learning for myself. And then on the technical aspect of it, I am very technically challenged. I'm like the worst of the worst. And video editing is like, what? How do you edit? What? How do you record?
Uh-huh.
So literally, I was starting from scratch, and
Mm.
and over the course of the pandemic, oh my gosh, I am quite proud of myself that I have improved so much
Oh.
with not just my video editing
Mm-hmm.
skills, but also kind of making peace being in front of the camera, that
Mm-hmm.
when your aspiration is to represent a underrepresented community, you have to have a certain level of willingness and comfort to
Mm-hmm.
put yourself out there. And
Definitely.
sure, that is definitely a feeling of vulnerability,
Yep.
because when you put yourself out there, you're also putting yourself out there for
Oh
criticism.
yeah.
And that
Mm-hmm.
comes with the territory.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger your platform goes, there will always be a percentage of people that are displeased for whatever reason and will
Mm-hmm.
express that. And that's okay, to
Mm-hmm.
each their own. So, what I learned is always stay focused on your why,
Mm-hmm.
your passion, because it
Mm-hmm.
is so easy to get derailed. Even the social media platform, whether it's your choice of social media platform is YouTube or Instagram or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it is so easy to get distracted by
Mm-hmm.
metrics, by likes, by all forms of, cosmetic validations. It is so easy to get caught up in that. And sure, we're humans, that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
But to be aware that when that happens, to stay focused on why. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing?
Right.
Is it
Uh-huh.
for the instant validation,
Mm-hmm.
or is it so much bigger than that, so much bigger than myself? And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what has helped me stay focused throughout this entire journey. Whether I was doing pop-ups and
Mm-hmm.
putting myself in person out there in the local neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
or doing YouTube where I'm out there and a stranger could say the meanest of things, comments,
Mm-hmm.
or now putting myself as a founder of a CPG product owner in the frozen dumpling industry segment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is okay to be in a state of discomfort, for I believe that that's when the most growth happens.
Mm-hmm. So, you talked about a bit of like why you started, like your reasons for why, kind of wanting the Tibetan culture and heritage out there, and you didn't see a lot of Tibetan women-owned mainstream frozen dumpling. What are your personal whys? Like, how did that affect you as a person and an individual in your journey?
It has a lot of self-discovery happens and
Mm-hmm.
growth happens along the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though at the face value it might seem like, it's a commercial venture where I'm selling something for
Mm-hmm.
profit. Although, let me make it clear that in the food business, profits are generally very, very slim. So, if you
Mm-hmm.
want to get rich,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that food is a way to do that.
Uh-huh.
So, you really have to feel passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in this journey, it's been a lot of discovering my own limitations,
Mm-hmm.
my own insecurities, and my
Mm-hmm.
strengths as well.
Yeah.
And being much more aware of that because it really brings to the forefront,
Mm-hmm.
you know, your own, uh, what do you want to call them, demons or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever those may be. It comes to the forefront because you are put in all kinds of situations in this entrepreneurial journey,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and you will have to make decisions, why are you in this journey,
Mm-hmm.
and that will kind of be a north star in guiding why you make the decisions that you make, why you represent the products that the way you do,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. So I feel that, yeah, I'm on my journey of self-discovery,
Mm-hmm.
reconnecting to my roots, and
Mm-hmm.
and certainly not perfect by any means, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely a work in progress. Yeah.
What is something you learned about yourself through this process that like really surprised you, that you had kind of no idea about yourself?
I am definitely a lot stronger than I
Mm.
thought I am or
Mm-hmm.
was. One of the reasons why I hesitated the way I did in taking it to the next level and launching this line of frozen food products is because of my fear and insecurities of whether I, as an immigrant mom,
Mm-hmm.
was capable of even doing something like this. Because
Mm-hmm.
in my preliminary research, I had a lot of well meaning, well intentioned feedback that this is not, this industry is not for someone of your stature to enter. The
Mm-hmm.
barriers of entry are just way too high. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why when you look at the frozen aisles of big box stores,
Mm-hmm.
you will see that, especially in the dumpling, you will see
Mm-hmm.
that most of them are international corporations that are selling,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Korean dumplings or Chinese dumplings or what have you. And so I got a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
well intentioned, but still
Yeah.
very discouraging
Mm-hmm.
feedback. And I remember what really pushed me over the edge was when I was in one of those sessions of doing research. I found that there are many, not many, but relatively quite a few multi-million dollar frozen momo brands in India
Oh, okay.
and in Nepal, and none of them are owned by Tibetans.
Hmm.
They're all owned by non-Tibetan men.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really just, I don't know, emboldened me. That was my
Mm-hmm.
moment of, I am doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I am still very scared.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether I can do it, but I will do it and I will give it my best.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, if things don't go as envisioned, then at
Mm-hmm.
least I know I've tried.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really was the push I needed to see that, you know what, I'm going to create a seat at the table for Tibetans and for
Mm-hmm.
Tibetan women and for Tibetan immigrants. And I hope, even though I'm the first,
Mm-hmm.
by people from my community and diaspora seeing me there, by people from underrepresented communities seeing me there, that will empower people or inspire people to feel that if she can do it, I can too. And so it's as much about representation as it is about empowerment, as it is about a voice from the Native community telling our story in our voice. And that's why, if you look at the back of my packaging, you will see it's not just a nutritional, bless you. You will see that it's not just a nutritional label, talking about the food or whatever. You will also see a little blurb about my story and giving the customer cultural context to the food. Because for me, this is so much more than just food or selling food. So,
This seems like it's not just a success story for Kyikyi, and it seems a success story to all the Tibetans and all the underrepresented minorities out there. And you are already successful in starting your own brand, so this is a huge win for the Tibetan community and for
thank
everyone
you.
else. But I know you have visions and goals to go even further. So we are here for you. We are backing you up, and I really think you'll make it happen as you already
Thank
are.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
of course. So how has your relationship with food kind of evolved from young age to now? And did you have someone that kind of influenced you the way you see food today, even when you were younger?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. My relationship with food has changed so radically over time. As a child and much into my adolescent years, my relationship with food has been one of simply eating it and enjoying food just the way it is. And then, like I mentioned earlier, when I became a mother, that's when my relationship with food really changed, and it's on a much more deeper and meaningful level, where it wasn't just a means of giving, instant gratification or filling my belly, but it was so much more about where it came from, what it means, what it represents, the culinary heritage aspect of it, and all the, memories associated with that. Yeah, so certainly I went from being, from the consumer standpoint, to being a food maker and a storyteller. So my roles have changed too, as far as my relationship with food over the course of time. And as far as a figure in my life that influenced me, um, probably, probably a figure that keeps coming up in my mind is my late Momola. She was from Lhasa, the capital of Tibet. And I lived with her as a child for a few years when I was little in Darjeeling, which is a small town in India where there is a large number of Tibetan refugee settlement. And I grew up with her, and my memories of her are still so vivid, even though she passed away when I was quite young. And she would make my memories, earliest memories of food are all related. She would make these so delicious chura momo and shogo momo. Those two in particular really stand out in my memory. And churro for those unfamiliar, are made with cheese, fresh Tibetan cheese. It is it's not necessarily a dessert, but it's not savory either. It's like this sweet touch of sweetness with the touch of tartness. It's very delicious. And then we dip it a little bit of sipe, which is hot sauce in Tibetan. And it's just this beautiful complementary flavor, combinations of sweet and tart with a touch of spice. It's just so delicious. And the taste memory is still so vivid that that I really hope to one day, when my brand has matured a little bit, I hope to really introduce some more of the traditional um, Tibetan momo recipes. So I look forward to doing that. But yeah, she's definitely one that has influenced played an influential role in
Mm.
my relationship with food.
It's so special that she would make you those chura momo and you still think of them, and that's kind of how you connect food as one of your earliest
Yeah.
memory. It's so special. Uh, so chura momo, is that, so you said that's actually like the one of the most traditional Tibetan momo?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And is that Tibetan cheese? Is there cheese here that that's like similar?
I'm sure you can find alternative ways to make it, but
Mm.
traditionally we would make it from a female yak, right?
Oh.
Definitely flavor profiles vary a
Uh-huh.
little bit. But yeah, Momola would make it from cow's
Make.
milk. So
Was she?
um,
Oh, okay, nice.
yeah,
Wow.
it's definitely quite something,
Uh
and
huh.
I can't wait to share that Momo in
Oh.
particular.
Do you make it for your family and your loved ones today?
I have
Uh huh.
not often because it's definitely a different flavor profile that
Mhm.
um yeah, I think when it comes to taste, it's not so much just the flavors, but
Mhm.
it's your mind, your perception
Mm.
that you have to
Mhm.
get over once in trying new flavors.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of been the experience with introducing foods to my daughters as well, who
Oh.
are born and raised here, right? So their
Mhm.
palate is heavily influenced by American cuisines, because
Mm.
that's what they grew up around as well over here in schools and stuff like that. But yeah, I have made it a couple of times, but I would love to be able to introduce that to customers in future.
Mm. What is shogo momo? What's shogo?
Yeah, shogo is the Tibetan word for potatoes. It's actually not alu.
Oh.
Alu
Okay.
is just a is just a Hindi or a Nepali word with a Tibetan accent. Alu.
Oh my goodness. Why am I learning
Yeah.
about this just now?
Yeah. So we say alu. It's just a Tibetan word, like
Uh-huh.
But yeah, shogo is actually the
Shogo.
proper word for saying potatoes.
Oh
So shogo
wow.
momo is
Uh-huh.
yeah, potato momo, super delicious,
Uh-huh.
and also another traditional way of making momo. And this momo actually varies slightly in that the dough wrappers
Mm-hmm.
are more like tingmo, steamed
Oh,
Tibetan
okay.
buns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Like the
So they're
circle
more
ones, right?
fluffy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're more fluffy. And so it's like potato buns, savory potato buns. But yeah, that's sugar momo.
That's actually my favorite kind of momo,
Yeah,
shogo
yeah.
momo, which I used to call alu momo. Um, so I went to school in TCB Gopapur, and once in a while, once a year, we will get to make momo. And since it was a DCV school, we didn't have
Uh-huh,
meat, so we would have potatoes with our
uh-huh,
momo, and that's just one of my like earliest memories of like eating dumplings or
uh-huh.
momos. So like that's also very special to me, and it's still my favorite kind of dumplings. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
um, all right, so how I you touched a little bit on this. How has your gender, as well as being a mom and a woman of color, influenced you as an entrepreneur? And what were some difficulties along the way starting this line as those as a woman and a mother and a POC?
Yeah. So when you are growing up a refugee and a girl,
Mm-hmm.
and then for Tibetans, many of us, I grew up in India, Nepal. Um, you learn to navigate at a very young age the systems and the bureaucracies that aren't necessarily built for protecting minorities or
Mm-hmm.
refugees, right? And you experience various forms of biases and discrimination, as I did. And for me personally, I never knew such words called discrimination even existed until I came to the US.
Mm-hmm.
For me, growing up as a Tibetan girl and a Tibetan refugee, it was just a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
When people call me chinky or, bote or, like that, um, yeah, I knew no different. So I didn't take it much to heart, but I definitely learned looking back how to become resourceful
Mm-hmm.
and, resilient to make the best with the little you have. Right.
Right.
So, and I feel like those qualities really has helped me as even an immigrant entrepreneur
Mm-hmm.
and a person of color,
Mm-hmm.
those qualities have really served me well. Sometimes I joke and I tell my daughters, Mama grew up poor,
Mm-hmm.
where water was rationed, electricity was rationed. When I was their age, when I was 6, 7, I remember literally in Darjeeling, I must have been no more than 6,
Uh-huh.
literally going up this hill where the water would be released by the government at certain hours. So I
Uh-huh.
would carry this
Oh
huge,
my goodness.
I don't know,
Uh-huh.
10-gallon or whatever with my little body, carrying the water, trying not to
Uh-huh.
spill, going uphill and coming downhill with those waters.
Mm-hmm.
So my momola and we could have water to cook food, to
Mm-hmm.
wash, and so on and so forth, or not getting certain permits and stuff like that because they said you are Bote or you're Tibetan, you
Uh-huh.
know? And so all these little incidents and situations that I found myself in as a Tibetan girl or a Tibetan refugee, it's it's in the over the course of time has really helped me navigate my ways, like I said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, through tricky
Mm-hmm.
situations where yeah, you can either sit there and dwell and
Mm-hmm.
or figure out a way to come out of
Mm-hmm.
it.
I
And
think.
so yeah, so I really feel that those challenging situations growing up and
Uh-huh.
even coming to the US as an immigrant, I've had my share of discrimination. But yeah, it's helped me become much more stronger as a person. I always tell my girls, Mama may not be the smartest, but when it comes to stamina, I can outlast a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
And it's because of the experiences
Uh-huh.
I've had as a
Wow.
girl and as a
Mm-hmm.
refugee and immigrant that has
Yeah,
helped me build that stamina.
of course.
And it's those qualities are serving me well as an entrepreneur.
It's such a different take because usually when I like so in schools we would have these questions where how has your gender and being a woman of color influenced you like in coming to college or just kind of you know what are some challenges, and there's I always give some answers of like how it's challenging, and although it is challenging, like you'll still face discrimination and stuff because of like the past experience,
Mm-hmm.
like as a refugee myself and a woman of color, these have really kind of pushed me through. And like I
Mm-hmm.
remember in high school, one of my teachers said, Renzin, I wholeheartedly believe like because of the experience you had, like you're one of the student that really pushed through even with like all the difficulties along in the way,
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
I went to a really white school, so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a lot of resources and a lot of teachers that understood me, and it's just I really like that. I think it's important to be mindful and be aware that like how our past experience have kind of strengthened us rather than weaken
Absolutely.
us. I really love that take. Thanks for sharing that, Kikila.
Absolutely.
So my other question, so I grew up around a lot of well, wait, that's a lie. I grew up, so I have this one particular figure in my life, and she's Tibetan, and she really is so skilled in the kitchen, and her friends are, and like
Mm-hmm.
I've seen other people be really skilled, like my friends' moms, and they're all just really good at cooking, and sometimes they'll give me some food, and I'm like, ooh. But I see all these Tibetan people so talented in the kitchen and so dedicated to feeding their family and making the
Mm-hmm.
tastiest food.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, why do you think there's not a lot of people kind of going into the journey that like kind of the route that you're taking? Why isn't there a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mainstream Tibetan people going into the food market other than restaurants? Because you
Uh-huh.
would think there's so many talented people and skilled.
Right.
Why do you think there aren't that many people in the line?
Yeah. At least in my personal experience,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that there are two layers of barriers for the lack of representation that you see more on a mainstream level or more on a large scale
Mm-hmm.
effort. Um, One is the financial barriers to entry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Starting a restaurant is very expensive. Now you take something like a CPG, a consumer um, packaged food product like a frozen momo
Mm-hmm.
or frozen food of any kind, especially that what contains meat. From a regulation standpoint, it's intensely rigorous. You're talking about not just financial resources, but also the technical industry know how to be able to navigate all those rules and regulations that you must comply with in order to even launch on a national level a food product. So, and that's hard for any first generation immigrant that is starting from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't necessarily have, you know, multi-generational worth of wealth or networks built here, and coming up with such resources, whether financial or industry know-how, is the access to that is quite hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that is definitely, in my experience, also, even though I am an educated person, it has still been extremely challenging for me trying to navigate, especially the the industry know-how part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It is so complex from a rules and regulation standpoint that some days I just want to pull my hair
Of
out, you
course,
know?
yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the first layer, I feel that that is one of the biggest barriers why there is a lack of representation
Mm-hmm.
from even our own Tibetan diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then the second, I believe, also could be a mindset thing, barrier from, at least it was in my experience. Um, being being a refugee when you are living in a host country at the mercy of a host country,
Mm-hmm.
you learn or you are nurtured early on to not ruffle feathers,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
not stir up things. And that means sticking to things that are quiet, stable,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel that that's one of the reasons why we have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Tibetans,
Mm-hmm.
and understandably so, completely understandable,
Mm-hmm.
that we have a lot of Tibetans in the community that gravitate towards professions that are not just well paying but stable jobs,
Stability,
especially in
yep.
the healthcare industry.
Mm-hmm.
Completely understandable, the psyche or the mindset where we're coming from, and the positions and the situations that we've been in. I
Mm-hmm.
completely understand. But what inadvertently ends up happening is that we are also, at least in my experience, I did not dare dream bigger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in the process, I did not have the courage to dream bigger. I didn't think I was capable of dreaming bigger. I didn't think I had the permission to dream bigger, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are, I have a very well paying day job,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm in the process of walking away from it. By doing so in a well intentioned manner because I have a family to support,
Right.
where I can transition, where my passions and my dreams can hopefully also sustain
Mm-hmm.
and, support my family in the process.
Right.
But yeah, so that's, I feel that those two are, if we had to generalize it or encapsulate it, those two are usually the two key barriers why we see the lack of representation, especially on a national scale,
Mm-hmm.
where our efforts are generally scaled down. So yeah, it's definitely not for the shortage of talent. It has more to do with access of
Mm-hmm.
resources and how we've grown up as refugees
Mm-hmm.
to survive.
Well, that really makes me think stability, finding jobs and careers that feel stable and kind of being obedient to this host country. Um, I look at someone like my aunt, and she's so talented and she could do so much, and she's so kind and she's so determined, yet she is working in jobs that has immediate income and um like what you would call like a stable job. But
Mm-hmm.
it really makes you think, as refugees, why do we choose these route? And it's not because we lack talent, it's because we lack
Exactly.
resources, and we're kind of at the mercy of the host country. um,
Exactly.
what would be kind of your advice on someone wanting is kind of on the fence of wanting to start the line, brand of Tibetan food, but doesn't know the first step, or they just feel intimidated, scared, but they totally have the talent and are thinking about it?
Yeah. Well, if you want to get technical, I'd say call your health department first
Uh-huh.
or your Department of Agriculture
Uh-huh.
to find out the rules and regulations that will put some kind of framework or expectations on what you should be working towards. But before you do that, I recommend, and this is not just for food line of business as well, but just in general, I recommend really being intentional and honest with yourself in what is your passion, you
Mm.
know, because ultimately it is your why that is going to give you the motivation to get out of bed on
Mhm.
those days when your body is absolutely exhausted
Mhm. Yep.
and
Yep.
you have experienced so much challenges and there will be setbacks.
Mhm.
um, and it is your passion that will really help you weather the storm.
Mhm.
And that's why, I know that oftentimes when we think of entrepreneurship in general, we think about technical skills and whatnot, and we don't talk as much about the soft skills or or the why.
Mhm.
Yeah, figure out your why first, and then things will, how you move forward after
Mhm.
that will be so much easier. It will
Mhm.
not only outlast you in those moments when you want to give up, when a lot of people give up,
Mhm.
but it will also be your North Star in how you represent your brand, in
Mhm.
how you show up um, in front of others. Take for example, like my packaging. My aspiration has always been to introduce the people, the world about our Tibetan culture through my
Mhm.
love language of food. And because that's my aspiration, I put in a lot of effort in storytelling on social
Mhm.
media. And if you turn and look at the back of my package, you will see a story about the food and the culture, because
Mhm.
that's what my aspiration is. It's not just to push bags of momo across the
Mhm.
counter. It's to introduce and pique curiosity of
Right.
people through food. Yeah, and hopefully that'll just be the beginning of the journey for many people. Food will be the first step, but that hopefully that'll be a journey of, increased curiosity and interest in Tibetan culture and
Mhm.
ultimately our story. That's why I say passion. Are you passionate about this? If
Mhm.
so, what is your why,
Mhm.
And then the next thing is plan. You've definitely got to have a solid plan.
Mhm.
That's what will help you execute your passion.
Mhm.
And last but not the least is have a solid recipe.
Mhm. That's
Because what good
important.
is passion? Yeah, what good
Yeah.
is passion if your can't, your product is not solid. So
Yeah.
spend time nailing down your food recipe
Mm.
and learn how to scale that recipe, whether it's
Mhm.
to serve one person or 1,000 people.
Okay.
And then you're all set.
That's a great advice, really. Uh, so if people want to follow you and see more of your content, how can they find you on Instagram and YouTube?
Yeah, that'll be amazing to connect with some of your viewers.
Mhm.
I am on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm under Himalayan Dumplings with the S at the end. So my name is Kyikyi, and if you're not on social media, I'm also my website URL is himalayandumplings.com.
Okay. Great. So you guys have those information. If you want to look at more content and more kind of follow Kiki's story, you can go on Instagram. Kikila, so I just want to thank you for being on this podcast and also just the work that you're doing. It's not just about food and being on selling your stuff. It's so much more than that. And the work that you're doing for the Tibetan community and for all the kind of underrepresented minorities. I'm really grateful to have this space with you and just so appreciative of what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much,
Of
Winsla, for
course.
giving me this space to, yeah, to talk, to share my
Mm-hmm.
journey, which is so much of our story as well. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so
Of
much.
course. I see kind of you as one of my Tibetan sisters and brothers that kind of like are taking off with such great business plan and doing such amazing things, and it's really truly inspiring to follow you and listen to your story. So I know for sure that it's gonna go well and you are gonna achieve all those goals that you want. Um, Before we say goodbyes, do you have kind of any last word that you want to kind of get out there?
No, well, not really. Yeah, I just appreciate the fact that you're doing what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
providing this platform to have meaningful and deeper conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and shining a light on areas of our Tibetan cultural identity that are not talked about very often,
Mm-hmm.
especially with food. It's something, and understandably so, within our immigrant diaspora. It's something that is underestimated in terms of its power
Mm-hmm.
to be a medium of telling people, introducing people to a different
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Definitely.
So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I look forward to connecting with some of your viewers on social media.